All the games, all the sides. Welcome to 5 Minute Lines.
Hello, welcome to 5 Minute Lines. This is Bryan. Good to be back with you guys on this Friday slate. I'm recording this on Thursday about 10:30, going through all the spreads, totals, and injuries for Friday's pretty big slate here. We'll note that the lines might change by the time you listen to this on Friday morning. Download our Action app for up-to-date lines and spreads and analysis and all that sort of good stuff. Would really appreciate it. All right, let's jump into the slate. First game is the Utah Jazz visiting the Philadelphia 76ers. This line opened up at 76ers minus 2.5, has since moved to minus 3. Total opened up at 216.5, since moved to 217.5. No injuries here. Both teams healthy. Of course, we got the debut on Wednesday of Jimmy Butler in the 76ers uniform. Did not go as expected. They were 6.5-point favorites on the road in Orlando and ended up losing outright by 5 points. Philadelphia was up quite a bit in the third quarter, actually, before the Magic ended up coming back in the fourth quarter and winning it. And some concerns about this team that I have, particularly on offense. We saw that Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Markelle Fultz, those guys really struggled to play with each other. I'm not sure that you can really play Markelle and Ben Simmons together at this point. I would try to stagger those minutes as much as possible. Play Fultz almost all with the second unit, because you saw anytime one of those guys was dribbling, the other two were inside the arc, really in a modern offense. And if you want to have any sort of semblance of an efficient offense, you want to have those guys spaced out. And, you did have Ben Simmons, who tried to space out the floor and stand behind the three-point line, but defenders are just not going to respect him at all in that position. So really just a clogged offense, one that did not perform well down the stretch. And there's going to be some growing pains for sure for this team. And I wanted to use that to say something about our NBA power ratings and just the betting market as a whole. When we updated our power ratings for both the 76ers and the Timberwolves after the trade, Jimmy Butler did give the 76ers a boost, as you might expect. I mean, he's Jimmy Butler. However, something like power ratings are not going to reflect chemistry issues or, figuring things out over time. They're more analytical than that. They're almost like a model. So Jimmy Butler is worth X, and you subtract Robert Covington and then insert Jimmy Butler. And then this is what the new power ratings are. So that's why there is some analysis needed, some human element analysis, where you can say, okay, perhaps power ratings in the betting market, perhaps as well too, could be overrating the 76ers team early on, just because they are not quite figured out what they want to do with their offense, whether they want to run pick and rolls with Ben Simmons and have Jimmy Butler, space out the floor, whether you want to play Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons together at all, and so forth. So, our power ratings have this as about 76ers minus 1.5, minus 2. So, a little bit lower than the current line of minus 3, but I even think that we're probably overrating the 76ers a little bit. And also, I'm pretty high on the Jazz right now. They currently rank about middle of the pack in defense. And a lot of that, I think, is just really, really poor luck. They're bottom 10, about 22nd, 23rd in effective field goal percentage allowed. And it's almost entirely just really poor luck on contested shots, which is NBA.com defines that as there's a defender 0 to 2 feet away. So, literally just in your grill holding your jersey. Opponents are shooting 50% against the Jazz on those this year. That's insane. It's obviously the worst mark in the league. Teams are shooting like 31% against the Miami Heat, which is the best team, and so forth. So you would expect the team, like league average is in the 30s, and teams are shooting about 50% against the Utah Jazz against like legit contested shots. We know the Jazz were one of the best defenses in the league, and I think that they have a really good defensive profile. They're not allowing a lot of shots at the rim, not allowing a whole lot of three-pointers, but teams are just killing them on tough mid-rangers and tough shots just in general. They're not allowing a high percentage of corner threes, but those like above the break threes, teams are draining those. Teams are draining long mid-rangers, which is like just obviously going to regress. And that's exactly what Philadelphia 76ers are going to shoot. So they're just going to shoot those mid-rangers with Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler. So I really love this bet, Jazz +3, just because I'm high on them and I'm low on the 76ers right now. So this is one of my favorite bets that I've been able to talk about on the podcast for a while. So we'll see if that works out. Next game is the Miami Heat at the Indiana Pacers. This line opened up at Pacers -4.5, since moved to -5. Opened at 212, since moved up to 213. Injury-wise, Heat dealing with a lot of injuries to guys like James Johnson, et cetera, but we have known about that for a while, so I won't recount all of that. Once we don't quite know, Dwayne Wade is going to continue to be out. Derek Jones Jr. is questionable to play. We have this as a projected spread of about Pacers -5.5 to -6, so a little bit of value on the Pacers at especially 4.5, but if it's really going to move up to -5 and even higher than that, then probably it's going to be about right. The next game is the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics, marquee matchup here. This line opened up at Celtics -1.5. It is still there. And the total opened up at 214, has since moved up to 215. Injury-wise, the Raptors, CJ Miles is out for this game, and Danny Green is probable to play. And then for the Celtics, Marcus Morris is questionable to play. I like the Raptors in this one. I will say I think they're just the better team. They have one of the best point differentials in the league. I mean, the Celtics are okay, but they're more middle of the pack than they are really at the upper echelon. And I think the Raptors are just really good and actually match up quite well with the Celtics, who really kill teams just because they have so many wings. Wings are perhaps the most precious commodity in the NBA. So guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, those are really very, very impactful guys to have, very valuable. And the Raptors have Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam and Danny Green, and the list goes on. They can match up with those guys, and they're going to have the best player on the floor in Kawhi. And really, honestly, how Kyle Lowry is playing, he might be the second best player on the floor. So I think that power ratings in the betting market still overrating the Celtics a little bit. I think that they were overrated coming into the season. And I think the Raptors are just a better team. I know that this line suggests that they're maybe just a point better than the Celtics on a neutral court, and I think that is probably just a little bit higher than that. The next game is the Brooklyn Nets at the Washington Wizards. This line opened up at Wizards -6.5, since moved to -7. Total opened up at 220.5, since moved to 222. Injury-wise, nothing for the Wizards, but we do have some pretty important ones for the Nets. Jarrett Allen and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson are questionable to play. Jarrett Allen was their starting center. He missed their last game, and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson started at center. So if both of those guys are out, I think one of you guys might be suiting up at center. So that'll be interesting. The Wizards, not a great team, obviously, 5-9 on the year, sort of a middling point differential. So not an exciting team. Based on our power ratings, we have this around Wizards -4.5, -5. So I think already just value if those guys play on the Brooklyn Nets. Question is whether they do play and what sort of that means for their rotation. They could really be down some impactful players there. So if those guys end up suiting up, we'll know, I think, in the afternoon once shoot around happens, then I think there's some value on Nets at that big number as a road dog, but I might wait just to see whether those guys are in, because losing your two centers would be tough against the Wizards. The next game is the New York Knicks at the New Orleans Pelicans. This line opened up at Pelicans -10. It is still there. Total opened up at 227.5, and it is at 228 currently. Injury-wise for the New York Knicks, Mitchell Robinson, who left last game with an injury twice, actually had to go to the locker room a couple times, is probable to play. And Elfrid Payton is questionable. We did get Nikola Mirotic back in the last game for the Pelicans, but Payton ended up not being able to go, and he is questionable. Hopefully we'll get him soon. Pelicans coming off a tough loss against the new-look Minnesota Timberwolves. They're going to try to get back on track. Have had a little bit of a slide lately, but they'll try to get back on track here at home against the New York Knicks. We have this as a projected spread of Pelicans -10, right about in line with what this line is. So I'm not sure there's a whole lot of value. Next game is the Sacramento Kings at the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are 6.5-point favorites. Total opened at 212, and it has since moved up to 214. Injury-wise, Kosta Koufos is out for the Sacramento Kings. He's been out for a little bit. The Grizzlies looks like they will get a little bit of wing rotation back here. Ivan Rabb is not on the injury report, so he looks like he will be back in the rotation, and Omer Caspi is probable to play. We have this as a projected spread of right between 6 and 6.5, which is right where this is, so I'm not sure there's a whole lot of value on this one. Obviously not a super exciting game to watch, Kings Grizzlies, and unfortunately I'm not sure there's a whole lot of betting value if the line doesn't move. Two more games. The next one is the Portland Trail Blazers visiting the Minnesota Timberwolves. This game opened at Portland -1 on the road. It has since bumped up to -1.5. Total opened at 223.5, since bumped down slightly to 223. Injury-wise for the Blazers, Mo Harkless and Seth Curry are both out. So important wing rotation there. They're going to be hurting a little bit. For the Timberwolves, Jeff Teague did return. Andrew Wiggins was able to go last game as well. Dario Saric and Robert Covington both made their debuts on Wednesday. As I mentioned earlier, they got a nice win against the New Orleans Pelicans. Derrick Rose did miss that game, but he practiced Thursday. We don't have any word on whether he'll definitively play or not, but practicing Thursday seems like a pretty good sign. So I would monitor his status for tonight's game, less because of the spread and more if you play DFS. I am sure Derrick Rose isn't worth anything to the spread, but he's a very high usage player and plays a ton of minutes for Thibs. So if he is not able to go, then perhaps some of these guys could be intriguing DFS plays. Our power rating suggests this is at Blazers -1, so right in line with what the spread is currently. Final game is the Chicago Bulls visiting the Milwaukee Bucks. This has a line of -13.5. It is still there. Total is at 223, has since moved up to 224.5. Injury-wise, nothing for the Bulls other than the stuff that we already know, like Lauri Markkanen. Bucks do have a couple guys out, John Henson and Dante DiVincenzo, who both went out last game with an injury, are going to be out again tonight. So obviously two rotation pieces, not super important starters or anything like that, but rotation pieces nonetheless. Based on our power ratings, we have this as Bucks minus about 15.5. So maybe a little bit of value, although it's I know a book is really not going to want to bump up to -15.5, -16 unless the public drives them up. So understandable that they would open a little bit lower, but the Milwaukee Bucks, just based on power ratings, are significantly better than the Bulls, especially at home. It is a national TV game, I will say, 9:30 on ESPN. So perhaps they make a statement. Giannis is going for the MVP, but 13.5 is a high number, although our power rating suggests that is not quite high enough. So that's it. Thank you guys for listening. As always, please go download our app. Good luck this weekend, and we'll talk to you guys on Monday.